What's up, everyone? Today we're talking structural balance. This is a hot topic that a lot of people have asked about, that they want to know more. We're going to be going deep into length tension tests, what they are, why we do them, and what risks you face with your training if you're not aware of your shortcomings.
We're back. We're back today. It's just myself and Rad and Richie. We are Unity Gym and the Unified Movement System. If we haven't met, my name's Yanni Burmeister. Guys, if you want to know how we turn driven people into strong, flexible, athletic legends, download our blueprints. They're available in the description of this replay on YouTube, on the podcast, or from our website. Big shout out to everyone tuning in from the UMS Movement Mastermind private Facebook group. If you haven't already and you're catching the replay, get on over there. You can request to join that group. Everyone's welcome. Just make sure you agree to abide by the code of conduct, and you can interact with us live on the podcast recording. How are you today, Rad?
Yeah, I'm good. Just a little bit tired today. It's been a busy week for us, but that's the way it is.
A lot going on as we navigate our business through this coronavirus health pandemic.
Maybe as we navigate 3 businesses through the coronavirus health pandemic.
That's right.
Someone said to me the other day, geez, you look stressed, Rad, and I said, I probably am.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we're feeling it as a lot of other small businesses. You know, it's a really tough time to navigate right now, and it's barely even getting started for small businesses. At least in Australia, because in Australia, you know, we were propped up by the government for a while. So
now the pain comes. Now the true pain comes. Yeah. For those of you watching around the world, we got a lot of sort of government support and stimulus for the last 6 months to help small businesses to get to this stage, but now the reality kicks in because all of that winds back, and we have to learn to stand on our own.
And you know what? I did not intend to mention this at all, but whenever we say anything like this, we always get an influx of people saying, "What can I do to help?" There's 2 things you can do to help. The easiest thing is write us a positive Google review.
And Facebook.
And Facebook review.
Facebook is super important.
A positive Google and a positive Facebook review. Even if you're somebody that just watches our YouTube videos, it just helps rank us with the algorithm. And the second thing is just keep, getting our programs. If you like our stuff, buy our programs. That's the best way to support us.
Buy our stuff. Yeah.
It's the best thing you can do.
Morning, Clay.
Yeah, morning, brother. Welcome to the show. So today we're talking about how to assess your body for imbalances. That was the topic for the week, and we're going to be going into the length tension assessments today. This all comes from the Structural Balance Blueprint, which is exclusively reserved for our UMS online coaching members, but we're going to give you a sneak peek into it today and this week, really.
Yep.
So the content of the Structural Balance Blueprint is it's got the principle of structural balance and why it's important, flexibility tests to assess your readiness to train, symmetry tests to assess your structural balance, and then strength tests to assess your structural balance. So we've spoken about the principle of structural balance and why it's important, but Yanni, do you want to reframe that?
Let's throw the brakes on and talk about why this is so important. Yesterday we had a bit of a mix of a show going on. We tried to frame the need for, or the reason why we do structural balance assessments to find imbalances in the body, and we're going to really go deeper into it on today's show, tomorrow's show, and Friday's show, because this is such an important topic, and it's something that we're both very passionate about.
You know what we should do? I might just read the first 2 paragraphs from the Structural Balance Blueprint, because that says, you spent a lot of time summarising this, so do you want me to just read that quickly?
Okay. Yep.
So, taken directly from the Structural Balance Blueprint. So, the principle of structural balance. Now that we understand a few of the variables that may alter the mechanics of your body, it's important to understand that strength training is about learning to capitalize on your strengths and optimize or work around your limitations. To do so, you need to understand your body, and the best way to do that is through periodic flexibility, symmetry, and strength testing. Structural balance is a term used to describe the length and tension relationship in each muscle and joint in your body. Although there has not been a universal formula agreed upon as yet, many sports and exercise scientists have produced studies and published a variety of helpful data, and that's what we've used to create the Structural Balance Blueprint.
That's right. And what we've adopted here has been it's basically was popularised and originally sort of really created by the late Charles Poliquin, who I was lucky enough to do a little bit of educational coaching with, and then it was adopted by one of my mentors, who I dearly value his input, Tony Battaggi, who's a brilliant PhD sports and exercise scientist here in Australia. And he made his own tweaks and adaptations to it, and essentially made it more practical, more useful for the average person, because Charles was very much niching in athletic performance at the time and bodybuilding. And then we've gone and taken what we've learnt from both of those individuals and made it our own, and taken it through another few levels of iteration to make it suited to what we're doing at Unity Gym. And so, there's the saying, I can see further because I stand on the shoulders of giants, and that's very, very much applicable here. What we're doing, we certainly didn't come up with it. This is stuff that stood the test of time. There's been many great research studies sort of honing in on the individual applications throughout here, finding the relationship between pushing and pulling movement patterns and what was optimal by looking at a whole group of really elite level athletes, looking at the relationship between things like the squat and the bench press, and looking at, so if like the top athletes can do this much of a squat in comparison to this much of a bench press, that seems to be the optimal range, for a balanced body. And there's about 15 really good peer-reviewed studies that have gone into this. Some of them from people like Dan Baker here in Australia, who's a great strength coach. And all of that data over the last 50 odd years has gone into creating a blueprint for what the most optimal body looks like and functions like. Optimal in both performance, being able to demonstrate strength, explosive strength, maximal strength, and flexibility, and also for injury mitigation. So essentially, in layman's terms, this blueprint is taken from athletes who perform at the highest level and injure themselves the least amount, or have the least risk of injury. And that's what we, pride ourselves on carrying over and teaching our tribe, because, most people, as we said yesterday, go to the gym and train for aesthetics or train to lose weight for health-related reasons, with no real structure other than they choose to do what they're doing, or a personal trainer suggests to do what they're doing, and there may or may not be a notion in the background of trying to train for balance. So, don't skip leg day. If you're doing lots of upper body, do a bit of legs. There might be an idea of, okay, well, if I'm doing lots and lots of chest and tricep exercises, maybe I should do a bit of back and bicep exercises. But there's not really any set structure to it, and that's what the anatomical structural balance blueprint brings into it, and that's what we strongly recommend everyone adopt some method of assessment, because training in and of itself, lifestyle we know creates imbalance. If you sit in a chair all day, you become very unbalanced and you become suited to that chair. And then what happens when we get out of that chair and we want to go and perform in an athletic environment, we might want to play soccer or football or throw a ball or run fast. Our body's adapted to the seated position. There's muscles that have tightened and shortened, created tension to suit that. And there's other muscles that have really disengaged and switched off and lengthened to suit that. Mm-hmm. And those same muscles are required to make you run properly, and to make you jump properly, and to make you sidestep and be agile. But if they've become adept to the chair, they're usually not very adept to physical exercise anymore. So that's what happens in our lifestyle. But what people don't take into consideration is that we can also manipulate the body with our exercise. Our body adapts to what we're doing. And so if you go and exercise without structure and without balance, you can exacerbate problems that you've already got. One of the most common is that we tend to train the things or do the movements, do the exercises that we're already good at. For instance, if you have a strong bench press, men tend to bench press a lot. You know, if a girl has a good, if a good strong squat, she tends to squat a lot, and she doesn't do a lot of deadlifting or upper body work. You know, if we're good at cardio, we do lots of cardio. You know, if we're good at running, when we go to the gym, guess what we do? We jump on a treadmill and we run. That's just human nature. You know, but that coupled with the lifestyle behaviour can create quite bad imbalances, and we steer further away from that anatomical structural balance blueprint that we know we want to get to perform at the highest level. So what we've come to realise is that if we create a culture where when we go to the gym, we're not just going to show off to our friends at how much we can lift. We're not just going to rip up and look good in the mirror or to the ideal mate. We're not just going to lose weight so that we remain healthy on a cardiovascular level or on a physiological level. We can do all those things at the same time as following this research that we've collected over the last half decade from the best athletes in the world. And if we use that as the roadmap for our training, then we get everything, you know, and that's actually possible.
Yeah, I think that's a mic drop.
So why don't we go in and talk a little bit about how we do it in the UMS, because one of the worst things, and I mentioned this yesterday, most people that you have two ends of the spectrum. You have those who don't assess at all and are guessing, as Rad said yesterday, and then you have those who over-assess and they don't use the data. It's just useless data. It's stifling and it can be quite confusing. And so what we want to do is find that balance in the middle, and we've withered this down to what we believe to be the most functional, the most applicable, and it provides only hard data and useful facts that we can go and use, you know. And then we, in the UMS program, we immediately use that data to structure the next mesocycle program. So Rad, why don't you share a little bit about the first, and today, guys, we'll give you a little bit of pre-frame here. Today, we're just going to cover the length tension assessments, which we call the UMS flexibility test in the blueprint. And then tomorrow, we'll cover the strength tests, which are probably what everyone's wanting to get a little bit of insight into. That's like how much your bench press should compare to your squat, how much your bench press should compare to your chin-up, things like that. And then we will cover how we use the data for our tribe to create personalized programs despite being in a group environment here at the gym.
Yeah,
Cool?
Sure, absolutely. So, yeah, it's through us having this structural balance process laid out for our members, and then having a program split that has stood the test of time and aligns with, is a very easy way to just, so to speak, sort of drag and drop the exercises that you need to do into the days of the program split to overcome the imbalances that the structural balance tests reveal, that we get such good results with our tribe. And this is why we've got so many 5-star Google reviews. You know, people that have been training for 15 years that come along and do this, and they just go, oh my God, I just can't believe how amazing this is. This is really the secret sauce to our UMS online coaching program. So one of the assessments that we use is called the overhead squat test. And the overhead squat test is one of the most comprehensive assessments that you'll ever be able to do, because it takes care of pretty much every joint in the body, definitely every major joint in the body. It assesses the ankles, knees, hips, spine, shoulders, and to a lesser degree, elbows and wrists as well. So, by doing the overhead squat test, if you know what you're looking for, you can get a whole lot of data. Like, just for example, if your lower back tucks under as the squat depth increases before a certain point, then it indicates short hamstrings. It indicates that your hamstrings are tight. If you are, for example, if your heels lift up when you get to the bottom range, or the shins don't travel forward, meaning the knees don't naturally go over the toes. That indicates tight calves. So a lack of ankle flexibility. And there's all of these other, things that an overhead squat test is assesses. For a lot of people, there's so many of these boxes are being ticked, and as a good coach, it takes practice to be able to recognize all of the things that are going on.
Well, without giving too much away, let's just rip through exactly what we look at. The overhead squat test, I just zoned out there for a second because I was reading some comments that were coming up. I assume that you explained why we use the overhead squat test. We use the overhead squat test because in one movement, within about 5 seconds...
It's the most comprehensive.
Yeah, it gives us a lot of data. And quite frankly, guys, some strength coaches don't like the overhead squat test for that reason, because it gives so much data.
Yep.
And if you don't know what to do with that data, then it's over-assessing, it's stifling. And so all of this stuff is only practical, and I really can't stress this enough.
And in all honesty, for some people, the overhead squat test is ineffective because they're at such a beginner state that when there's so many things that come from it, to try and write a customized program that's based on fixing all of those different things, when the short answer is really we're just going to work on basic structural balance in the shoulders, hips, and ankles.
And you've just addressed something that I wanted to save till Friday, but we may as well talk. We can talk about it now, which is that we don't even do these assessments anymore until people have gone through the foundations program.
Yeah.
Because of that reason, because you get. There's just so much that the body needs when in an untrained individual or an individual who's trained in a very poorly structured manner, that it can be quite stifling. And we don't want people to come into a program and just get the mirror put in front of them and show them how dysfunctional their body is, because it can turn people off exercise.
Yeah, which is a good example, because if for anyone that's listening to this and thinking, oh my God, this is so much information, that's exactly why we created the Foundations program. Because in our experience, and we've had a lot of experience, Yanni and I have both been personal trainers for 17 years, and in our experience, probably 95 out of 100, maybe even more people need the same program.
Let's save that till the end of today. So very quickly, overhead squat test. This gives us data for both the upper and lower body flexibility and also stability. We look for heels lifting up or the shins not traveling forward, or even if the feet turn outwards or inwards as the person descends. We look for the knees collapsing in on the descent. We look for the knee buckling in and then out again during the ascent on the way back up. We look for lower back tucking under as the squat depth increases. We look for the lower back tucking under as the squat depth decreases. We look for the spine extending as the depth of the squat increases. We look for the hips sitting back with excessive forward torso lean. We look for if there's visible weight shifts from one side or the other. And we also look for whether the arms travel forwards and how the elbows are bending or remaining straight. And we even assess on a deeper level how the individual's managing to grip the dowel rod as they're performing the movement. And all of those data points tell us exactly what's going on in the body. But as you can imagine, if you're very new to exercise, you're going to get so much data, and there's only so much you can address in one program mesocycle. So what we learnt over almost 20 years, 17 years of using this assessment, is that it's actually more conducive of an elite or more experienced person doing or performing it. It's better for someone who's more experienced doing the assessment, because you get a clearer data analysis. And for beginners or people who are not used to doing strength training, or maybe have been very specific with their training for a certain sport or a certain position, and now want to come back and train for balance. We've had professional rugby league players and soccer players like that, then it's a really, really good test. But for an absolute beginner, it provides way too much data.
Yep.
Moving on. The next test we do is what's called the modified Apley scratch test, and this is a simple. It stood the test of time shoulder flexibility test, and it basically tests both the upper and lower arm motion behind the back and behind the head, and it's going to give us a really clear indication of what's going on in the chest, in the lats, in the rotator cuff, in the deltoids, and allow us to see or confirm what we've already gathered from that overhead squat test. And some people call these auxiliary flexibility tests confirmation tests, because they kind of just give us that little bit of icing on the cake after that overhead squat test,
Yeah, as a coach, the thing that I look for the most with the modified scratch test is the imbalance from left to right, rather than so much, does shoulder flexion need to be worked on, or internal rotation or external rotation, because I think there's better tests to test that stuff. But I like to use it to see if the imbalances between the left to right side, which is almost always there, because we're either right-handed or left-handed. Very few of us are ambidextrous. But it gives a really good indication of, and a unilateral imbalance is far worse than just an imbalance. Those are
because we're testing for symmetry as well.
We're testing for symmetry. So that's what I like about that test. It gives you a good indication of, okay, wow, we do need to work on this because there's a big change from left to right side. And some people don't have it. Some people it's not that bad. I've got it. I've got a big imbalance from left to right side.
Perfect. And that's where we go into our symmetry confirmation tests with the lower body, and we test the straight leg for hamstring flexibility and the hip rotation test for glute flexibility. And basically we get the individual to lay supine, which is on your back, flat on the floor, and we raise your legs straight. And if less than 100 degrees, we get a lot of data that indicates, so we're testing the hamstrings. If we can't get the hamstring with a completely flat back on the ground, or even a slight arch in the lumbar, if we can't get the hamstring or the leg to 100 degrees or past that, we know that you're going to be compromised in movements like the squat, in movements like Olympic lifting, and even potentially in sort of like snatch grip deficit deadlifting and things like that. You're going to be going into excessive lower back stress if you can't maintain that angle in the hips. And same with the glutes. We know that if you're not able to get your knee internally rotated, your leg internally or your thigh externally rotated, your leg internally rotated to 90 degrees, we know that you've got compromise in the glutes, and we know that you're going to have excessive tension, excessive pressure build up in your hips when you try to do deep squatting, and it also is going to affect overall flexibility in many of the other movements. So, and then, as Rad said there, we're getting a confirmation of limb symmetry from left to right side, which is really, really important, because when we don't have limb symmetry and we go into a bilateral movement like a squat or a deadlift, there's a torque force that is applied to the spine and is applied to the hips and things like that. Essentially, the body wants to rotate into one of those sides, whether it's the strong side or the more flexible side, and that can create major problems because it can create more glide in the joints. It can create all sorts of risk factors for wear and tear and injury.
Yeah. Look, I think we've done a pretty good job now at framing why we do this stuff and what the reason is, and going through some of the examples of what we do.
Just quickly talk through the last test that we use, which is the modified Thomas test, because that's the last one that we do for this.
So the modified Thomas test is the for the hip flexors mostly. Hip flexors and quadriceps.
Exactly how to do it. You don't need to go any deeper than that.
So you lay down on your back on a bench, like ideally, like a massage table is the best thing. And you have to have your glutes off the bench so that the hips are free to move. If your bum is on the bench, then your hips aren't free to move. And you grab one knee, pull it all the way to your chest, so the knee has to be touching the chest, and you let the other leg completely hang. And by doing that, we can tell imbalances in the hip flexors and the quadricep, mostly the rectus femoris.
Yep, perfect. And that's the flexibility test that we use. And from doing those, we get a truckload of data that we can help the individual with focal points. Because the reality is that in a mesocycle of training, even in a macro cycle of training, there's a saying that has been used by many of my mentors: you can't ride two horses with one ass. There's only so much that you can address at any one time that you want to really double down on, and you want to choose the things that are the most obvious and really make those your focal point. It's like calisthenics training. You can't get good at every calisthenics move. You want to double down on a handstand masterclass or a muscle up masterclass and make that your priority for a macro cycle of training, which is usually a cluster of mesocycles. Mate, we have 3 mesocycles in a macro cycle, I think. 4. We have 4. So that just helps to provide insight into, okay, for the next, you look for the lowest hanging fruit, the biggest issues, the biggest level of compromise.
The biggest wins that you're going to get.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what you want.
The domino. You look for the domino that's going to, if knocked over, it's going to knock over other things.
And the problem is, by nature, we avoid these things. If you start a program, and that program is makes you feel highly accomplished, like because you can do the stuff in there, then it's low value for you. If you start a program that challenges you, that it reveals weaknesses in your body, that is a high value program for you to do, because that's showing you that there is a lot to be gained from that program. So you shouldn't avoid the things that reveal imbalances. You shouldn't avoid the things that make you feel like a beginner. You should embrace that and go, head on at it. Because that's where you're going to have the biggest wins. And this is where a lot of people really struggle. And it's quite funny, the people that have the biggest wins at Unity Gym in our program here are the people that come in, open their eyes up and go, oh my God, I'm so bad at this, and then just put their head down and do it without asking questions. And you look at them 6 to 12 months later and they've come so far. And then on the other hand, you get people that come in and they can do some things really, really well, like it's usually strength, it's usually feats of strength or fitness that people can do really well. And then you show them how to do some of these flexibility movements and they can barely touch their toes. And you can see the challenge in their ego. You can see them go, why should I do this? And they don't stick it out and do whatever. And very, very small opportunity for personal development and for physical development if that's the approach that you take.
Well, the biggest, I think what we spoke about on Monday is a super important point to finish up on here today, which is, and it's interesting, I sent an email out to the email database that addressed this issue, and I've had 3 practitioners email me personally asking if they could share it with their database. Because it simplified the concept of the difference between competition and training, and what I said in my email was that although I love CrossFit, the thing I hate about CrossFit or dislike about CrossFit is that it accidentally blurred the lines between training and competition, and for most untrained or individuals who just dived into CrossFit, both coaches, CrossFit coaches, and people who were just enjoying that type of training, that style of training, they went at it as though training became competition, and as though their bodies could withstand competing every single day. And the nature of the WOD was, by nature, competitive. It was about you either competing with your peers at the gym versus time or versus the amount of volume you could do, or you competing versus your previous score. And the problem I have with that is that no human body can withstand that level of intensity all of the time. No professional athlete could play a game every single day. They train very differently than they compete. We train so we can compete. And training should not be done driven by ego. It should be done driven by the notion that you are dialing in everything. You are improving your physical performance. You are improving your anatomical structural balance. You are improving your load capacity so that your body can withstand more when it does compete and there's less risk or chance of injury. And that's why we think that this is so important that people start to adopt something similar, because that's why we go to train. We go to train. This is what Charles did so well, Charles Poliquin. He made it really clear that training wasn't competition. Yeah. Training was training for competition.
Yeah, that is so, so important. Like, if you are a competitive person, then by all means compete, go and do things, but that's not what you're
It's important to.
The competition is there to test to see how your training is doing.
Yeah.
And then you can
and to show off a little bit. Yeah. It's okay to show off. But it's in our nature to want to do so.
To turn up to the gym every day and to think that those gym training sessions are to compete, oh God, it's a bad idea.
It's a terrible idea. It leads to injury, and this is why CrossFit got absolutely hammered in the past, which it really probably didn't deserve, because as a sport, as a competition, it's amazingly entertaining and a really great test of physical performance.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
But you can't put people through that as their means of training all the time. It's you do that maybe once a week as a competition, but you train differently. And very quickly, people started to realize, okay, I break if I keep doing that. You know, I saw someone in our circle who was an elite level CrossFitter, Courtney. Did you see on her Instagram feed? She's just gone in for 2 more ankle reconstructions. You know, yeah. I've never met a veteran CrossFitter who hasn't completely destroyed their body. You know,
at a very young age.
At a very young age, and that's just it's not the way it's meant to be. You know, and if sport is that important to you and you're willing to make those sacrifices, then that's totally cool, you know. But you still, you know, you're not going to have a very long training career or career as an athlete if you compete every day.
I don't. Yeah, look, I like to personally. I like to be more polarizing than this, because the truth is, we all, you know, there's this. You can't put an old head on young shoulders, right? Like there's that saying. But you know what? There are certain things that when you're young, you say, no, this is really important to me. But as an older person, you know that the time is going to come when you say, why the fuck did I do that?
Yeah.
And if you beat the shit out of your body, and by the time you're 30, you can't do any of the things that you like, I'm going to throw it out there. You're not going to look back and go, I'm so happy that I did that.
I'm so happy that I destroyed myself. Yeah.
That I am so fucked now that I can't even go to the gym and lift weights above my head because after my 3 shoulder reconstructions, but I got to compete.
Yeah.
Like, it's not. There's a smarter way to do it. And the competition, I'm not saying don't compete, but fucking hell, man.
No, just separate competition
separate
and training.
Competition and training, and train in a way that makes your body thrive.
Yeah, train in a way that supports your competition, doesn't hinder it, you know.
Yeah.
And
if the competition is killing you, like I had an email from somebody recently that was talking about how they're in their 50s and they've got, like, there's something wrong with their knee, or there's something. I mean, Yanni and I get these emails all the time, so this was a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was basically saying that when he does, that he loves competing in MMA, but every time he does it, his knee gets worse and worse and worse because of the rotational force from having to do kicks and from blocking and the nature of it. And he said, you know, what can I do? I don't want to give up on the competitions in MMA. And I mean, my answer was, honestly, man, like, everybody comes to a stage in their life where you have to reevaluate something that's a physical pursuit that is making your body worse by doing it. And it's a young person's game to do something like that. Like I know that, like, people say, oh, you know, I'm 64 years young and I want to do these things. And, like, I respect the mindset. I respect that you're saying to yourself, you know, you're being positive and you're affirming that you're not getting older. But the truth is, your body is getting older.
Yeah.
You know, and
so interesting you say it. I watch the UFC on the weekend. I watch the UFC every weekend because I really enjoy it. And in the press conference afterwards, Dana White was asked. He's been. A lot of people have been talking about how he's lost a lot of weight and he's in really good shape at the moment. And one of the press in the press conference, he's looking a lot better. Yeah. And one of the press asked him while he was on the mic, answering questions, said, "Man, a lot of people have been talking about your transformation. What's going on, mate? Like, what are you doing?" And And he sort of laughed, and he said, the guy said, "What's the secret? Like, what training are you doing now?" And he said, "Man, for the first time in my life, I had another shoulder reconstruction last year, and then after that, coming out of that for the rehab, for the first time in my life, I hired a coach, a strength coach, and that guy's been working with me for the last 18 months, and yeah, man, he's a beast, and he's slowed me down, and he's got me focusing on the things I need to focus on, and I'm not training with ego for the first time." And the guy goes, "So what are you training for? And he goes, "Man, I'm just training to not get fat and not hurt myself. I'm 50 years old, and I'm just trying not to hurt myself again, you know."
Yeah.
But it just goes to show that, like, everyone gets to that point where they realise that they've been getting it so wrong.
Yep.
You know, and I'm telling you right now,
Yanni and I did it, and we did it at an age that I don't know. I mean, man, like, you want to fuck yourself up, go and join the army as an infantry soldier. God, that fucked me up.
You can be polarising without swearing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
well,
you can be polarising without swearing.
It messed
He's passionate. All right, guys, that's all we've got time for. We've gone over time. I just want to give a quick shout out. We got Jada Goodwin Crosby here, who's joined, and she's said hello. First of all, I love everyone who says hello to us when they're on the stream. It just lets us know that there's some people out there who care. But Jada has... I watched some videos that Jada put up, which we'll talk about on our live coaching call. I promised to give her some feedback on Friday on the live coaching call. She is... I almost didn't recognise her. She is an absolute weapon right now. You are progressing incredibly well, Jada, and I just wanted to give you a massive shout out. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and you're just your movement, your form, your technique, your pull-ups, your push-ups, your pike push-ups that you put videos up of. It is all looking really good. You are on the right track, sister. Keep it going.
Yeah, awesome. Well done. All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. We're going to continue this talk about structural balance. So
we're going to move into strength testing tomorrow. The fun stuff. See you guys. Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.